Disney's Oscar-winning animation Beauty and the Beast is often considered one of the studio's best. Still, over the years, fans have analysed the film and uncovered numerous movie mistakes, goofs and plot holes. Yippee-ki-yay movie lovers, it's Jan here, and in this video I'll be explaining how Disney's live-action remake of Beauty and the Beast fixes many of those mistakes. And just before I get stuck in, be warned there are spoilers ahead for both movies. To avoid them, you can tap or click here to watch my spoiler-free review of Beauty and the Beast, and come back when you've seen the films. Now I invite you to relax and pull up a chair as I proudly present 10 mistakes, goofs and plot holes fixed by the new Beauty and the Beast movie. Bookworm Belle seemed to have a curious arrangement with a bookseller in her village. She didn't appear to actually buy any books from him. Instead, she borrowed books freely whenever she wanted something to read, making his bookshop more of a library than an actual business. The new movie cleverly fixes this by having Belle borrow her books from the local priest, Père Robert, and acknowledges the original movie mistake by having her thank him with the words, "Your library makes our small corner of the world feel big." In fact, it's odd that there's a bookshop at all in the original film given how much all the townspeople hate reading. And it's a callback to this inconsistency when Père Robert refers to Belle as the only bookworm in town. You might have enjoyed watching Gaston fall into a muddy pond after Belle fended off his advances in the animated movie. However, the way it happened really doesn't make sense. What I mean is that he falls out of Belle's door straight into the muddy pond. However, the pond isn't anywhere near Belle's house, so that couldn't actually happen. This time around, Gaston doesn't fall into a pond, but he does step into a muddy puddle just after Belle rebuffs him outside her home. And notice that the filmmakers located that muddy puddle a little way down the street from Belle's house, very likely in recognition of that funny, incongruous moment in the original movie. The time period for the original Beauty and the Beast was never officially confirmed by Disney, but the clothes, the type of gun Gaston uses, and the use of steam-powered machinery by Maurice suggests the likely time period is the 1790s or early 1800s. Now that means that the Eiffel Tower, which appears during Be Our Guest, is an anachronism because construction only began on it in 1887. The new movie makes a very funny correction to this original movie mistake, as it replaces the Eiffel Tower in Be Our Guest with a guillotine joke when Lumiere chops a baguette in two. The guillotine would have been historically accurate for the animated movie, because this form of execution was introduced in France during the French Revolution in 1792, which fits into the likely time period when the animation was set. Curiously though, Lumiere's use of a guillotine joke may have introduced a new movie mistake into the live-action version, because, as I just mentioned, the guillotine wasn't common in France until the late 18th century, whereas Disney has stated that the remake is actually set in the mid-18th century. By the way, chopping the baguette may also be a little knowing joke by the filmmakers about how they cut the line "Marie the baguettes" from the new movie. Talking of timelines, there's a significant plot hole heavily implied in the animated movie. In that film, Lumiere revealed that the castle has been under the Enchantress's spell for 10 years. And the narration at the beginning of the film explained that the prince had until his 21st birthday to break the spell or the curse would become permanent. If we do the maths and subtract 10 years and 21, this suggests that the prince would have been around 11 at the time of the curse. But the painting we see the beast slash is one of him as an adult man, which doesn't make sense if he was cursed as a child. The new movie neatly fixes this issue in a couple of ways. Firstly, we see that the prince is already an adult when the enchantress curses him. And secondly, Lumiere's line in Be Our Guest changes from 10 years we've been rusting to too long we've been rusting. The ages of Chip and Mrs. Potts in the animated movie have also been questioned by fans. In that movie, Chip's voice sounds younger than 10 years old, and he also looks very young when he transforms into human form, which implies he was born a teacup. This crazy thought has spawned theories about whether Mrs. Potts the teapot could actually have given birth to a teacup while enchanted. Also, when she's in her human form, Mrs. Potts looks somewhat old to be Chip's mother. These age problems are fixed in the remake, as the filmmakers made a point of including a scene where Mrs. Potts and Chip run into the ballroom as the prince is being cursed, meaning that we know they both existed in their human forms before the curse was enacted. The new movie also makes a joke about the idea that Mrs. Potts was perhaps rather old to be Chip's mother in the original movie. This happens when Lefou asks Mrs. Potts if she's Chip's grandmother, which infuriates her, so she kicks off the attack by the enchanted objects on the villagers invading the castle. And there's another Mrs. Potts goof fixed from the animation during Be Our Guest. You'll need to look carefully, but notice that when Mrs. Potts utters her iconic line, "Heaven's sakes, is that a spot?" this time she cleans off a dirty spot on Chip. but watch the animation carefully just before this moment and you'll see that even though Mrs. Potts hops around all over the place and we get to see her all over, there was never a spot on her at any point until she says that line in the film. The new movie gives proper time on screen to the Enchantress, with new details and clarification of how the curse works, helping to explain away other plot holes in the animated version. For example, in the original movie, it seemed silly that the local town was totally unaware of the nearby castle. This is fixed in the Enchantress's new narration, as she explains that her curse made everyone in the town forget that the castle and the servants who lived there ever existed. When Maurice can't figure out which way to go in the original film, it seems like an overwhelmingly foolish choice to take the fork in the road that leads down a dark and misty, foreboding path. Maurice's horse, Philippe, really doesn't want to go down that way either, but the animation uses his master's poor choice to set up an accident where Maurice gets separated from Philippe and ends up later at the Beast's castle. The new movie has a much better take on this in keeping with its story, as a lightning strike causes a tree to block Maurice's usual path, which then forces him to take the alternate, more ominous-looking path. When Philippe returns home to Belle in the animation, he appears to know how to take her to Beast's hidden castle. This makes no sense because Philippe had never been to the castle before, having bolted before Maurice ever got to the Beast's enchanted home. In the new film, Maurice ends up at the castle with Philippe, so now it makes more sense that the horse would be able to direct Belle there. In both movies, Beast comes to Belle's rescue when she's attacked by wolves after trying to flee the castle, and in both cases he gets badly injured. The animation, however, skips over how Belle managed to lift the unconscious and enormously heavy Beast onto her horse. The new movie has a nice subtle remedy to this problem when Belle goes to the injured Beast and says to him, "You have to help me, you have to stand," because it's clear that there's no way Belle will be able to lift the huge beast by herself without his help. So what do you think of Disney's Beauty and the Beast remake, and how well do you think it fixed any problems with the original? Also, did you spot any new movie mistakes, goofs or plot holes in the new movie? Do let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this, I'd really appreciate it if you hit that like button. And while you're here, check out my full Beauty and the Beast playlist with Easter egg videos, secrets about the making of the movie, and my breakdown of the differences between the 1991 and 2017 movies. Tap or click here to check those out, and subscribe to get notified about all my upcoming new Disney and Beauty and the Beast videos. Thanks for watching and see you next time! Yippee-ki-yay, movie lovers!